Hello, I'm Sumit Bose. Welcome to the Net Hero podcast. This podcast is for you if you're interested in business and reducing our carbon footprint. Our belief is that better business leads to a better planet. Who wouldn't want to make things that have less impact on our society? It's a podcast for people who are inventors, academics, people working in the energy sector, or from any different field that believe that they can do something better to make the products and services we use every day less harmful. Now, we've been running for about 3 years and it's been very successful with about 36,000 downloads and plenty more, massive engagement. But this show now needs a sponsor. We've done it editorially for all these years, but we need your help. So we know you've got a loyal audience out there. If you'd like to get involved and sponsor the show, then email me on the email just below on your screen. And we'd like to see if you're the right fit for us and that you've got the same vision we have. Now, on to this week's episode. Plastic. Oh, I know we've covered it a few times on the podcast, but it is a vital part of what we do and what we live with and how we function. From my mobile phone casing to the plastic around the camera that you're watching me on, to the food and drink industry, we can't get away from it. And where would we have been without plastics during the COVID pandemic? But the big problem with plastics, as we all know, is they remain for thousands of years. One of the things that's been going on probably for 2 or 3 decades is the idea of biodegradable plastics. And you'll see lots of packaging, recyclable or biodegradable. Well, what does that actually mean? How biodegradable is biodegradable? What does it actually mean in terms of how safe that plastic is in the environment and how big an industry is it? That's some of the stuff I'm going to cover today. And our guest is Michael Stephen, who is a member of the board for a company called Symphony Environmental Technologies. Michael, former member of the House of Commons, another little club, is that right?
Yeah, right. A much smaller club now.
A much smaller club than this
on
one.
The Conservative side.
Exactly. Before we get into this, how does an MP get involved in bioplastics?
Well, when I was in the House of Commons, I was on the Environment Select Committee, and I got interested in things like plastic pollution. And when I came out of Parliament with a lot of others in 1997, I was surprised to be approached by a chap called Michael Laurier, who is CEO of Symphony Environmental Technologies. And he said, would you like to join our board as a non-exec? Because we're very interested in this subject of plastic pollution. And we think we have the answer to it. So I said, yeah, I'll give it a try. And after a while, they said, we'd like you to be an executive director. So, yeah, I said, okay, and I'm still there.
1997, the world was very different. I mean, let's be honest, did I really think about pollution? I probably did. I thought about pollution, but I didn't really think about plastic, and I think many of us did. I didn't think about plastic straws or packaging, plastic bags. When I went to the supermarket, you just get them. Although I did kind of reuse them as bin bags. Why were you interested? Because they must have been very, very, groundbreaking in that time. Because I couldn't have thought of anyone interested in biodegradable plastics back in that day. So why did you want to get involved?
No, you're absolutely right. But one of the good things about the Environment Select Committee in the House of Commons is that we do think it's our job to look ahead. And in 92, 93, 94, we were looking ahead and we were seeing that plastic was going to be a problem. And what were we going to do about it? And everyone was saying, oh, well, we'll have to ban it. Well, I felt uncomfortable with that because I know and still know that plastic is immensely useful, and we really can't do without it for protecting our food and our water and other goods from contamination. And it saves a lot of lives, especially in the third world where people are much more exposed to disease than we are. So I'm thinking, we really don't want to ban this stuff, but what else can we do? So then I was really pleased to find that Symphony Environmental Technologies had been thinking about that as well. And together with Professor Scott at Aston University, they'd come up with a way to make plastic biodegradable, just ordinary plastic. And all you do is you put a special master batch in it, which has got catalysts and stabilizers. And the plastic product, whatever it is, it's a shopping bag or whatever, is perfectly okay for its programmed service life.
Yeah.
And then if it gets chucked out into the open environment, it's exposed to sunlight and heat, and it starts to degrade. And eventually is eaten by microbes, and they finish it off. But the reason, this is what happens to ordinary plastic, actually. You will know that if you expose ordinary plastic to sunlight, it fragments and little bits go all over the place.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
that's
you
where
see a bag in the garden that's been sitting there for ages or whatever. Absolutely, yeah.
And that's where the microplastics are coming from to the very day. And Michael and his team said, right, what we've got to do is to make the plastic so that these microplastics become accessible to the microbes. And the way to do that is to reduce the molecular weight, that is to break up the molecular chains within the polymer, not to break up the polymer itself into little bits, but to break up the molecular chains within the polymer so that the microbes can then get into it and consume it and finish it off. That's the difference between oxo-degradable, which just fragments, and oxo-biodegradable, which then is eaten by the microbes because the molecular weight has been reduced to the point where they can get into it.
Let's do a quick little lesson in this, because correct me if I'm wrong, but I think all plastic still comes from the oil and gas industry, from hydrocarbons. And what they are basically carbon chains that are spun off and made into these longer polymers that make things, and you can either heat them or treat them and they become hard or soft plastics, etc. So are the things that you're making, are you saying that basically all plastic, if it was treated the right way, could just be broken down by bacteria and microbes in the environment? Because a lot of people say, no, it's got to be a special type of plastic that can only be broken down. So can you explain the science bit again for us, just to if I've got that right, is that where it comes from, or the oil and gas sector?
You are right. I mean, ordinary plastic, polyethylene or polypropylene, will not become biodegradable because the molecular weight is too high.
Right.
Now, there is a type of plastic which is marketed as compostable.
Yes.
Which is bio-based. It's made from starch, and it's also got some fossil resources inside it. But that is designed to be taken to a composting plant, and it will biodegrade there. What it won't do is to turn into compost. And I have a problem with people calling this type of plastic compostable.
Because I see that on the bags all the time. This is compostable.
Yeah. Well, it doesn't turn into compost, you see. It's tested according to EN 13432 standard, which actually requires it to turn into CO2 gas. So they really shouldn't be calling it compostable. But that's by the by. The main point is that we are concerned not with plastic that you can collect, because if you can collect it, you can recycle it, you can compost it, and do all sorts of things with it. We are concerned with the plastic that doesn't get collected. That's the problem. It's out there in the open environment. Governments all over the world are worrying about what to do with it. And the answer is you make the plastic in the first place with our D2W master batch, and then it essentially self-destructs. If people are stupid enough to chuck it out into the open environment, it self-destructs.
So are you saying that this kind of little DW2, is that right? Is that what it's called?
D2W, yeah.
D2W, right, sorry.
It looks like a bag of sugar. We sell it to the industry, and they pop it into their machine.
So this bag of this material, while you're making your plastic, you chuck it in, yeah?
Yep.
And then whatever plastic you make, whether it's hard or soft, like whether it's a carrier bag or the plastic around this microphone, are you saying that all of this could eventually be broken down
Well,
because
in
it's got this
theory, yeah, but we wouldn't put it into your microphone because you don't want that falling apart.
No.
And we don't put it into plastic used in motor cars. We don't want them falling apart. But the plastic that is just single use,
Yes.
packaging, bottles, that sort of stuff, we don't want that lasting forever. So we put the D2W inside there. With one
Right.
exception, it doesn't work with PET. PET is a plastic which is used to make bottles that look like glass.
Yeah.
And the technology just doesn't work with them. It works with bottles made of polyethylene or polypropylene, but not PET.
Hard plastics is an issue, isn't it? Because once a car gets to the end of its life, particularly we're going to have more EVs and all that's something that I don't think, maybe again, you know better than me, whether they can start to recycle things like that. But is that an area you think that this technology could eventually go to? Like you say, we do need them to last for a while, but eventually these things need to be recycled as well.
I don't think we do need to go into that field because when a car gets to the end of its useful life, it goes to a car breaker's yard and he extracts all the things that are useful, including the plastics, and he sends them off for recycling. And that's exactly what should happen to them. No, it's the packaging and bottles and stuff that you find on the beach that we're concerned with.
What is the state of this then? So this technology has been around for a while, and am I fair to say that what you've got here is something that's available today? So it's not science for tomorrow.
Yeah,
it's already in the market and it's being used. But you believe that there's some confusion on why this is not kind of more widespread, because
that's
the
right.
market's kind of mixed on what messaging. Because as a consumer, I wouldn't know, would I? Right? I wouldn't know the difference between your plastic and someone else's that says it's biodegradable.
No, you wouldn't need to, because we're assuming you are a responsible consumer and you won't
I am.
the environment. But sadly, there are some people who are not responsible consumers. And also, a lot of this stuff gets out into the environment by accident. The wind takes it off a municipal refuse truck and off it goes. So that's what we're concerned about. So you don't need to know that it's biodegradable. You just treat it in the ordinary way.
Gotcha.
If by chance it gets out, in cricketing terms, it's like a long stop. You know, the wicket keeper's supposed to catch it, but if he doesn't, so we're the long stop.
How much of this is being used right now? Your stuff out in the environment. Would I probably have used a bag that had it, or something else that I'd have bought in a shop would be made of this stuff?
You're unlikely to done in the UK and in Europe. Because there's been a huge amount of misunderstanding, and I think I could say misinformation in the UK and Europe about it. There are people still going around saying it creates microplastics. And I say to them, no, the microplastics are coming from the ordinary plastic. You're quite happy for that to be used. Why don't you make it with D2W so that it will degrade and biodegrade at the end of its use? Oh, no, microplastic. No, this is all wrong. We don't create microplastics. We actually deal with the problem of microplastics by making them biodegrade so that the microbes can eat them.
Why is there this reticence then?
This misinformation, I'm afraid, is being put out by companies who make the rival type of bio-based plastic. And it's the same as it was in Adam Smith's day. It's mercantilism. It's the big companies with the big pockets trying to
step on the little guy. The D2W. I don't. It's like KFC secret sauce. I don't expect you to tell me what the secret rub is. But this material itself, is that something that can break down as well? Because people always talk about the carbon footprint of everything. How kind of reactive is this material? Does it produce more emissions, or is it kind of fairly inert, so it just helps the plastic break down?
Yeah, no, the plastic that really makes the big emissions of CO2 is the type which is advertised as compostable.
Right.
because you put that into a composting plant, if you can find one, and it immediately turns into CO2 gas within 180 days, and it's all emitted to atmosphere. Now, with our type of plastic, we don't advertise this as compostable. We don't expect it to be taken to a composting plant. We expect it to be responsibly disposed of and recycled. So we make it recyclable, which the compostable plastic is not recyclable, but ours is. So you can recycle it. But if by chance you don't, and it ends up in the sea or the river, it will take care of itself without any further human intervention.
What time scale? This is the thing that people talk about. Some plastics will be around for thousands of years. We know that. Some are sort of 50 to 100 years. A bottle that's made with your stuff, with your secret sauce, it goes out. Someone chucks it into a river. How long before that's broken down by the microbes? Are we talking years or months?
Well, a great deal shorter time than if the master batch was not inside it. As you say, if the master batch was not inside it, you'd probably still be able to find it in that river in 50 years' time, or maybe more. With D2W inside it, you wouldn't find it after 6 months or a year.
Wow, that fast?
That fast. They did some studies at Queen Mary University, London, and they
my old uni.
Right. Well, there you are. They found that our type of plastic degrades 90 times faster than ordinary plastic.
What happens to it? Does it just get absorbed by these bacteria? Because this is the other thing people ask. Okay, it goes away. And everyone thinks, well, nothing ever actually really goes away. It just transforms from one thing to another. Yeah. So once it's broken down, and then the microbes, as you said earlier on, can get to it, what do they do with it? Do they produce any CO2 with that, or do they just absorb it into their cells? Or
well, just like us eating our food, they eat it. Right. And just like us, they produce a bit of CO2. Right. We're breathing out. That's what they're breathing out. And when they die, they leave their dead bodies around, and we call that biomass. So that's and water. So all you get is a little bit of CO2, which is the breath of the microbes, and some water, and some biomass, and that's it. That's all natural products.
Is it certain bacteria, or will all bacteria break it down? Because that's the other thing is, people say, well, in a certain condition, like you talked earlier about, you compost it in a certain condition, whatever. Is this something that would just work, whether it's sitting in a river in the UK or sitting in a river in Colombia? It doesn't matter where it is in the world. This stuff can be broken down.
Absolutely. Yeah? This is the great thing about it. It doesn't need to be taken to a special place where there are special conditions. It's not compostable plastic. It will degrade anywhere that it has access to oxygen and a little bit of light. Light will make it go faster, but it's not essential. It will continue even in the dark.
Wow.
So if you bury it, it will keep going. It goes more slowly, but it will keep going.
To interrupt you, but the company's been going for about 20 odd years. Why isn't all plastic made of this stuff? Why have I not heard of this until we're doing this podcast today?
Well, we do our best, but we're a relatively small SME. We don't have the huge resources that the compostable plastics industry has for their lobbying and podcasting all the time. But we have had some success. The biggest bakery in the world, which goes by the unlikely name of Bimbo, is based in Mexico, and they own a lot of bakeries in the US and elsewhere.
Right.
And they've been using our technology for their bread packaging for 20 years now.
Wow.
Actually, the governments of the UAE, United Arab Emirates, they heard about this, and they sent their experts to our laboratory in London, and they went through the technology with our scientists. And they went back to their governments and they said, hey, we need to make this compulsory in our country, so we don't get plastic lying around in the desert, camels eating it.
Yeah, absolutely.
So the government said, yeah, sounds like a good idea. So they passed a law in 2009. Wow. And now in that country, you cannot use plastic unless it's got our technology inside. And then the Saudi Arabians next door, they thought this is a good idea. So they did the same. So did Bahrain, and most recently Yemen. You'd think that Yemen had got enough to worry about
Too right.
the Houthis, wouldn't you? But no, they're still concerned about their environment. And they've just said, you're not going to make plastic in this country unless it's got D2W inside. And they actually closed some plastic factories last week that weren't using the D2W. But then you're going to ask me about Europe.
Exactly. This sounds great, because one of the things we always get is we're doing things too much in the kind of, the developed world and not enough in the developing world or other places. So you've actually gone the other way around. You're being used in Mexico. You're being used in the Middle East. Why am I not seeing it here in the UK, where our rivers are full of this stuff?
I'll tell you why. Because when we were in the European Union, I call them the other guys. Good at lobbying.
Let's not name names for libel reasons.
They're good at lobbying. And they managed to persuade the Environment Committee of the European Parliament, only about a couple of dozen people, that oxo-biodegradable plastic was a bad thing. So they banned it. There was no ban in the European Commission's original draft. It just got stuck in by these lobbyists in the committee. And in Europe,
that is staggering. So hang on. So you're telling me that the thing that you've made, this oxo biodegradable, which is being used for 20 years in Mexico, which is being used in the UAE, is actually banned in Europe?
Well, you can argue about the terminology, but some people say it is banned.
Right.
And that's simply because the European Environment Committee was essentially misled. That's the problem. And we were so astonished. We took the European Union to court. Our little company, our little SME, we took them to their own court in Luxembourg. And I went along, and I was amazed. The European Court didn't want to know. And one of the things they said was, no, the evidence you rely on comes from people like Intertech and that. But you paid them, didn't you? And we said, yeah, of course we paid them. They don't work for nothing. They said, well, because you paid them, we're not going to listen to that evidence. Would you believe that? In the European Court of Justice.
So it's still not gone through then here. It's still de facto not allowed.
Well, you remember that we got out of the European Union.
Of course.
So it's.
But that's been the last at least 4 years. I still haven't heard anything of this.
It's not banned here.
Right. So have you started making an inroad into the UK market?
We have. Right. Absolutely, we have. But there's still this hangover from the European days, and the Welsh and the Scots, who are so keen on Europe, they're trying to ban it, even though we're not in the European Union. So, I go and see them, and I try and explain to them that there's no reason to ban it at all. But
what would you say to people who say, "Look, we're not sure about this"? Okay, and I get it. I get it that people are always. There's a thing about plastic where people have now developed after the David Attenborough documentary with the turtle up its, straw up its nose, whatever it was.
Yeah.
There's a kind of gut reaction to it that it's all bad.
Yeah.
You've just explained that the industry itself is in knots about it. How are we as consumers supposed to understand this?
Well, first of all, understand that the only reason it's bad and the only reason that turtle is getting wrapped up in it is because ordinary plastic lies around for decades.
Yeah.
But if it was made with D2W, it would self-destruct within a very short time, and you wouldn't get the problem. That's the difference between good plastic.
It's such a huge challenge, though, isn't it? I mean, I did a podcast with a couple, a really lovely couple in Bombay, who the pollution on the beach, mainly plastic.
Yeah.
They just outside their park, they basically just cleaned it up with their hands. They went and got a community thing.
Yeah.
But this stuff is everywhere, right? My family's from India. You see it everywhere. You just go down to parts of London, and some of the canals are full of this stuff.
Yeah.
It's such a massive challenge. Is it something that you think the governments are just thinking, look, it's just too big for us to even look at?
Well, it's so simple, isn't it? All they've got to do is do what they did in Saudi Arabia and the UAE and tell their plastic factories to use this new technology. End of story.
Who else has got it? Or are you the only people?
Well, all around the world. The only
Right.
place it's banned or possibly banned is Europe. Everywhere
No,
else,
I meant the D2W. I'm assuming that other people are making something similar to this
yeah,
out there in the world. So
yeah,
there are these oxo biodegradable plastics out there.
yeah. Not to be confused with oxo-degradable.
Right.
They're the ones that just fall into little bits and create microplastics. But oxo-biodegradable is in use all around the world. Yeah, and we have 5 or 6 competitors in
Yeah.
America, in Scandinavia, and India. Actually, I went to India, and the High Commissioner gave me a chance to speak to the businessmen there. And I said,
Yeah.
look, when the men were on the moon, they looked down in India and they could see the lines of the railway because of all the plastic waste on either side.
Yeah.
And
Absolutely.
they said, we know. So I said, well, are you going to put D2W into your next batch of plastic? And they said, no. And I said, well, aren't you concerned about the environment? And they said, well, sort of. But, we'll do it if the government tells us to do it.
And that's the thing, isn't
that was
it?
their attitude. I
So
couldn't believe it.
to end with, is that really what it will take? It would take, as you've seen with your examples in the Middle East, it would need policy to mandate this, to do it. Because commercially, and I haven't gone into it, but I mean, I don't know if it's more expensive, your material, than what's out there. I assume there's probably a cost element to it.
Very small cost. It costs no more than 5%, whereas 5%. The compostable plastic's about 400%.
Right. So do you think that's what it will need? It'll need policymakers to go, actually, not just here, but globally, go, whether it's your brand or someone else's, this is the future. We'll
get there eventually, and maybe your grandchildren will benefit. But if you and current generation want to benefit, governments have got to get behind it. And they've got to do what they've done in the Middle East and say, right, you're not making these single-use plastics with ordinary plastic anymore. You've got to put D2W technology inside. If they did that, then, well before our grandchildren start having problems, the problem will be much, much smaller than it is today.
I wish you the best of luck with it, Michael, and the company. I think it's a brilliant story. I think it's a really good example of a British business trying to do good. So best of luck with it.
Thank you very much for giving me the chance to speak.
No, my pleasure. What do you think, audience? Tell us what you think about this. I think it's very interesting stuff. This degradable plastic issue is one that we've got to look at. Give us your opinion. Send us an email on nethero@futurenetzero.com or contact us on social media, and check out what they're doing at Symphony Environmental on their website. I think it's some good stuff. Catch you very soon on the next episode.
You've just heard the Net Hero podcast from futurenetzero.com. Join us as we help you find ways to cut your carbon footprint as we head towards net zero. Subscribe and follow us on social media. futurenetzero.com. Better business, better planet.